Good morning or afternoon. My name is Janie Montblanc, and on behalf of the Great Basin Fire Science Exchange, the Native Plant Project, and our partners, I would like to welcome you to this webinar titled Southwest Idaho Native Seed Collection, Use, and Plant Material Development, presented by Ben Dyer with the BLM Upper Snake Field Office and Danelle Nance with the Twin Falls District Fuels Program. Before I introduce our speakers, I will go over some webinar details. If you have questions for the speakers or me, please type them into the questions pane of your control panel located at the top right of your screen at any time during the webinar. It helps us to receive questions throughout the webinar so that we have some lined up in the queue to begin addressing promptly after the presentation. Otherwise, I have to make some up. I also want to let you know that whatever you do in your control panel does not affect the webinar presentation, so you're welcome to type a test message or test your audio at any time during the webinar. If you're having problems with your audio, please open your audio pane and check your audio selections. Now I would like to introduce our presenters. Ben Dyer is the fire ecologist for the Upper Snake Field Office in Idaho Falls. He began his career with the BLM in 1999, working as a seasonal firefighter for the South Central Idaho Fire and Aviation Program, transitioned into the fuels program where he worked as a fuels monitoring technician for the Upper Snake River District out of Pocatello, and upon graduation relocated to Idaho Falls where he gained experience working in various programs, including fuels, GIS, and range. As a fire ecologist for the Upper Snake, Ben implements various fuels reduction and sagebrush step restoration projects, as well as oversees the Emergency Stabilization and Rehabilitation Program. Danelle Nance is a natural resource specialist with the Twin Falls District Fuels Program. She began working for the BLM in 2002 as a range technician out of the Shoshone Field Office. She has participated in seed collection and increase with the BLM since 2010. She has had the opportunity to work with partners such as the Idaho Department of Fish and Game and Chicago Botanic Garden to implement restoration work in the sagebrush steppe and looks forward to expanding and continuing that task into the future. Welcome, Ben and Danelle, and thank you for presenting today.
Thank you.
All right, I am making you the presenter now.
All right, does that look good?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. As previously discussed, my presentation is going to be on our sagebrush seed collection contract that I put together this last year and attempted to implement this last fall. I'll get into more on that later, but a little more about the field office. So the Upper Snake Field Office is one of 4 field offices that make up the Idaho Falls District. We're located in the Upper Snake River Plain of eastern Idaho, and we manage approximately 1.8 million acres of public land. So in 2015, our office took the first steps in creating a field office-specific sagebrush seed collection contract as a way to collect seed from locally adapted Wyoming big sagebrush. This seed would later be used for future restoration projects with the intent of improving degraded habitat for sagebrush-obligate species. Since 2009, staff within our field office have been collecting local seed and using it to grow seedlings for several of our emergency stabilization and rehabilitation, fuels, and other restoration projects. Projects were mainly focused in areas where reoccurring wildfires have all but removed the sagebrush off the landscape. Collected seed was primarily used for 2 main treatments, which included drill seedings and hand plantings. On an annual basis, the Upper Snake Field Office implements an average of 2 sagebrush-specific treatments for the purpose of reestablishing sagebrush within areas previously disturbed by wildfire. Funding for these treatments is usually provided through the ESR or fuels programs. 2 such projects where locally collected seed was utilized include the 2010 Jefferson ESR project, which was in response to the 2010 Jefferson wildfire. This project consisted of hand planting 40,000 Wyoming sagebrush seedlings and drilling approximately 1,000 acres with Wyoming and basin sagebrush seed. Additionally, to continue with our restoration efforts in the area, we are planting 100,000 seedlings via a service contract, which began last fall and will continue into the spring of 2016. Our second project is the 2012 Table Butte Restoration Project, which was in response to several 1990-era wildfires where natural sagebrush recovery of the site has been unsuccessful. For this project, we hand-planted 32,000 Wyoming sagebrush seedlings with the intent of planting additional seedlings starting later this year. Oops. It's not working. There it goes. So historically, our collections mainly consisted of 1 or 2 staff members going out for a day or two in the late fall and hand stripping or vacuum harvesting seeds. Collected material was placed into plastic 1-gallon bags and usually shipped to Lucky Peak Nursery for processing through an interagency agreement. While we were effective in collecting, our efforts usually only resulted in no more than 5 to 10 pounds of material. Given this value and the average ratio of seedlings produced to material collected, we would usually only end up with enough material to produce 20 to 40,000 seedlings. So a little more about the interagency agreement. It was through an interagency agreement with the U.S. Forest Service. The seed would be sent to Lucky Peak Nursery, where the inert plant material would be removed and the remaining seed dried and cleaned to sow quality and sown based on the agreement specifications. The interagency agreement process consists of 3 parts, which includes development and submission of a funded PR to initiate the process and authorize the funds, development of the agreement document between the BLM and non-BLM agency. This document identifies the specifications of the agreement, such as quantity, cost, delivery dates, what each party agrees to do, and the contact information for both agencies. Finally, you have the development of the Economy Act Determination Worksheet, which is used to support the decision to enter into an interagency agreement. Basically shows it is more convenient and is in the best interest of the government to use other government resources to complete the service rather than outside commercial sources. Essentially, it identifies the benefits of using other government agencies' resources, which for this project includes having the ability to clean seed, can produce both bare root and containerized seedlings in large quantities, has large-scale packing and shipping capabilities, located in a climate with an adequate growing season, has cold storage capability, and has extensive experience in producing various species of seedlings. So why a seed collection contract was needed? Well, it was because of our inability to collect large quantities of seed, the understanding that locally collected sagebrush seed had a higher likelihood of success, and that a recent study showed that only 17% of commercial seed lots certified as Wyomingensis were in fact the correct subspecies, that our office decided to experiment with utilizing a service contract for collecting local Wyoming sagebrush seed. The initial obstacles that needed to be overcome for this type of contract included how to format the statement of work, or SOW, and what contract specs to use. After contacting many of my counterparts and other program specialists throughout Idaho, it became apparent that a pre-existing statement of work for this specific type of seed collection did not exist, or at least no one I spoke to knew of the existence of one. One piece of information that was brought to my attention during the initial stages of this process was that Oregon had a Restoration Services IDIQ that was available for other federal agencies to use. While the IDIQ did not specifically identify sagebrush seed as a collection option, it did provide a good template for the development of this statement of work. So one of the first things that needed to be accomplished was to identify the seed collection areas. This was done through geospatial and ground survey methods. The geospatial data consisted of soil layers to determine natural vegetation, ownership and administrative boundary layers, fire history layers to ensure that collection sites were not adjacent to or within an area previously disturbed by wildfire, and, while not necessarily geospatial data, incorporate site-specific data provided by other field-going specialists such as range staff and biologists. Now, during the ground survey process, you want to ensure that sites contain plants that are at least 3 to 4 years of age, not recently drought-stressed, not recently impacted by rodents, pathogens, or insects, not extensively impacted by herbivory, are easily accessible, and the majority of the site or sites consist of or is dominated by a single sagebrush subspecies, in this case Wyomingensis. This will help to reduce the potential of the wrong species being collected. So what you end up with is a map essentially like this, where you have your collection area as a whole
identified in the green hash marks. And then you have your individual seed collection areas that have your highest potential for the greatest amount of seed collection. So for this contract, I identified 6 areas within the collection area that look to be the best potential for collection. That doesn't mean that the contractor can't go elsewhere within the collection area. Just those were the areas that probably would provide us with the most quantity of seed. So once you've created this map and identified these areas, then you want to make sure that you include this map with your contract and the statement of work so that the contractor can see where these potential areas lie and do a pre-bid tour if need be to kind of look over the site.
So the next several slides, we'll discuss some of the key parts of the contract. By no means am I saying that the contract specs developed for this seed collection statement of work are ideal or preferred. It's just based on the information that I received from other specialists and seed vendors, this is what I came up with. So for our contract, we wanted to collect 3,000 pounds of Wyoming sagebrush seed from pre-identified areas within the Upper Snake Field Office. 5% of the collected seed would be cleaned to sow quality with a 90% purity and a minimum PLS per pound of 0.7, while the remaining 95% would be rough cleaned, nothing larger than chaff remaining, with a minimum PLS per pound of 0.16. And I guess another way you could go about this is you could also look at just collecting all the rough, have the contractor collect just rough clean seed and then outsourcing or having another contract to clean a portion of that rough clean seed to sow quality, such as going through Lucky Peak Nursery like we've done in the past. And finally, I want to make sure the contractor will be responsible for ensuring that the correct subspecies is being collected by having a crew foreman on site at all time during the contract that can differentiate between the different subspecies of sagebrush. What I recommend here is actually doing a post-award site tour with the contractor and the foreman to get a feel of how comfortable the foreman is at identifying the target species. It's going to save you a lot of grief if right off the bat you can identify that if he can't identify those subspecies, then you may want to discuss it with the contractor and try to get a new foreman on site before the collection actually begins. Why is it not? So reason for cleaning seed to sow quality. A recent article out of the Native Plants Journal showed that seed that had been cleaned to a high purity, greater than 80%, promotes the longevity of the seed so long as it is dried to an equilibrium relative humidity of 30%, sealed in moisture-proof containers such as a 6 ml polyethylene bag, and stored at a temperature below 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Storing seed under these types of conditions resulted in seed remaining viable for up to 5 years. So while a majority of the rough clean seed would likely be used the year following collection, the sow quality seed used for growing seedlings would need to remain viable for several years, as it would be used on an as-needed basis. Now you might be asking, are these levels of purity even possible, considering that most sagebrush seed lots used for rangeland seedings are only cleaned to a purity of 15 to 27% due to the small nature of the seeds? And the answer to that is yes. Market research showed that the requested PLS values are attainable and are not outside reasonable limits and just require multiple runs through the cleaning equipment. So seed collection standards. For this contract, the permitted seed harvesting methods included stripping or knocking the seed off the stem, clipping the stem just below the spikelet, or vacuuming the seed off the stem. I also include the stipulation that no motorized mechanical harvest would be permitted and that none of the permitted harvesting methods should damage the live plant material. Additionally, to ensure adequate genetic representation, seeds should be collected from a large number of widely spaced or unrelated parent plants per site, with the optimal number being around 50 plants per site. No more than 50% of the seed crop at each seed collection site should be collected, and seeds should be collected and stored in such a way to ensure its viability. Now this is one statement I realized going back and looking at the statement of work, I probably want to strengthen a little more, and I'll talk about this towards the end, but I think we should definitely put some parameters in there as far as what we consider a good storage requirement is, such as keeping what the temperature specs or the relative humidity specs will be. But like I said, we'll talk about that a little later on. So cleaning, labeling, and seed delivery standards. Seeds should be cleaned to seed lot standards to remove excess chaff, stems, leaves, dirt, trash, and other impurities, including seeds of non-target species. Now the table below lays out the final cleaning and testing seed lot standards. Another point I'd like to make on this one, after looking at my old statement of work, I probably would change the purity to maybe 80% as opposed to maintaining it at 90. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but it may have discouraged some contractors from bidding on the contract because the purity was so high. But you have to realize that by doing that, you're also going to alter your PLS, and if you have a germination value of 80%, your PLS is probably going to be somewhere around 0.64. So just something to keep in mind. Additionally, the seed shall obtain a yellow source identified tag from the Idaho or Utah Crop Improvement Association, and the contractor will be responsible for delivery of the seed once the seed test results have been accepted. So packing and storage standards. For the contract, seed was to be packaged in non-porous plastic bags or containers, such as the 6 mil polyethylene bags, and kept refrigerated prior to delivery, with a recommended temperature range of between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. For post-delivery storage, depending on what your intended use is, you may want to identify a long-term storage source. So if you plan on, once receiving delivery, putting the seed on the ground either through an aerial contract or drilling, or shipping the seed off to a nursery for growing seedlings, you may not need to worry about this. But if you're looking at using the seed for on an as-needed basis for growing seedlings, you're probably going to need to look at some long-term storage. One example of a good long-term storage source is an ice warehouse that provides customizable storage areas. Now you might be wondering, why do we have to go through all this extra effort to store sagebrush seed, specifically Wyoming sagebrush seed? Well, it's because Wyoming sagebrush seed is small, short-lived, deteriorates rapidly, and generally does not exhibit dormancy that it requires such a unique long-term storage condition. For these conditions would include stored in moisture-proof containers with a moisture content of 5 to 10% and temperatures at or below 18 degrees Fahrenheit. So storing under these types of conditions will help to minimize metabolic rates within the seed and increase longevity. However, there's additional information that suggests seeds maintained at moisture levels of 5 to 10% can be safely stored at just about any temperature. Payments. Payments will be made upon receipt and acceptance of seed test results for each seed lot, in this case the sow quality clean and the rough clean. Payment will be on a per pound basis. One stipulation you may want to include is the price reduction option for accepted seed not meeting contract specifications but accepted by the government. The table below, which was included in the statement of work, identifies the reduced payment schedule based on PLS. Seed lots with less than specified minimum PLS based on the seed test results will receive the following payment reductions. So basically, we're just using the standard seed buy price reduction equation, which is tested PLS divided by offered PLS times the original award price. So what was learned? As I alluded to earlier, it wasn't really a successful collection this last fall. We had some problems with temperature and during October month, where it basically resulted in the sagebrush dropping seed extremely early for us in our collection site. So we missed our window. I guess one thing that I would take home, or several things that I would take home, number one being don't rely on the contractor to keep track of the seed maturity. You know, he was out there every other week checking on the seed, probably just making the rounds to the different states he had contracts in. And while I should have been out there probably twice a week looking to make sure that the seed wasn't ready or was ready. Probably the second point to make would be don't identify just one collection area. If possible, space out your collection areas geographically. Our initial collection area was located in the big desert portion of our field office, and because of the hot, dry temperatures we experienced in October, the seed dropped extremely early, and since I didn't have any other collection sites identified, we essentially missed the window, and the contractor could have just left and defaulted on the contract, or else, like he did, decide to extend the contract for another year and hope for better conditions next fall. And due to various unforeseen factors, always allow for at least 2 collection seasons for the period of performance. Now, I initially only had 1 period of performance from October 15th to January 31st. However, because we missed our collection window, I had to modify the contract and extend the contract out to 2017. And then, as I alluded to earlier in the presentation, strengthen some of the seed storage standards by requiring the collected seed be kept in cold storage with a maximum temperature of 40 degrees Fahrenheit and a relative humidity of 20% until delivery. So I know it was kind of quick and dirty, and I apologize for the slide slip up, but hopefully it got the point across. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to either call me or email me or ask them at the end of this webinar. So at this point, I'll transfer it over to Danelle, and we'll get the next one going.
So my name's Danelle Nance, and I'm a natural resource specialist in the Shoshone Field Office, well, Twin Falls District now. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the native plant material development that we've been doing in Shoshone and out in Craters of the Moon National Monument. Oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, for crying out loud. This is the worst mouse in the world. Why isn't it working?
Maybe your like the arrows on your keyboard?
I win.
Okay, great.
Yep, got it. Sorry. All right, so the Twin Falls District is located in south central Idaho, and the Shoshone Field Office and Craters of the Moon National Monument are located in the north part of the district, which is the Snake River Plain ecoregion. There's roughly 2 million acres of BLM managed lands in Shoshone and Craters. And the majority of the area is low to mid elevation sagebrush steppe, although there are several other vegetation communities present, such as salt desert shrub and mountain shrub, conifers, and some small aspen stands as well. So as with all land management areas, we have some unique local issues. This map shows large fires that we've had over the last 10 years in Twin Falls District. By large, that's over 7,000 acres. We get an average of 62 fires that burn 172,000 acres each year on the district. Native seeds are becoming an increasingly important component for rehabilitation treatment resiliency in the face of the extreme weather events and increasing fire frequency and severity that we're seeing, as well as for restoring and improving habitat for sagebrush-obligate wildlife species. On average, each year we purchase about 480,000 pounds of seed. We drill seed about 35,000 acres, and we aerially seed 65,000 acres, and that's across district. The point is we have proven to have a consistent need for seed on a yearly basis, whether for rehabilitation of burned areas or for proactive treatments. Other issues that are exacerbated by these repeat fires include harsh growing conditions, with increasingly unpredictable moisture, both timing and amount, and extreme temperatures. This has become a little bit bigger issue. Wildlife habitat quality loss. Specifically, this is for greater sage grouse, but it's really ranging from mule deer to pollinators as a problem. Fire frequency is increasing and fire return intervals are decreasing. As exhibited by the previous map, fire size and frequency isn't becoming any less of an issue in the Twin Falls District, but really in the west. And invasive annuals and noxious weeds. So these are prevalent almost anywhere. It's one species or another. It's not specific to our area. So considering the increasingly common practice of seeding due to the issues mentioned previously, developing native plant materials locally sourced for our area seem to be a logical next step for the restoration and rehabilitation work that we do. So why a native seed collection? Why are we doing this? Our goal is to provide local source-identified seed for our rehab and restoration works, yellow tags in our seed mixes. The benefits that we see include a larger selection of native seed for rehabilitation and restoration projects, improving the success with local source seed and augmenting the currently available commercially produced cultivars, not necessarily replacing it, just given the scale of the restoration and rehabilitation work that we'd like to do. Hopefully the collection of seeds that we do will contribute to more capable cultivars to deal with specific ecotypes and expand the seed choices that we have for rehabilitation from the correct seed zones as well. The use of generalists like Blue Bunch is still going to be critical to address the amount of base seed that we need to meet broad-scale restoration work. Locally sourced seed and plant materials can augment these treatments, though, to provide those species that aren't widely available but are very necessary to rebuild a diverse native plant community. These are also important for those areas that have stabilized and have few issues with invasive plants or noxious weeds and can provide for but may lack a diverse plant community, so we can go back in and interseed with those forbs and some of the shrubs that we're collecting as well. And finally, because of our participation in the Seeds of Success program, we're able to contribute to the long-term storage and preservation of the species that we collect. So establishing a program for seed collection is time-consuming and intensive, but it's well worth it. Each year that we collect seed, we follow the Seeds of Success protocol, which includes taking the time to verify locations of plants to ensure adequate materials for collection of the target species. And this helps if you have other resource specialists looking for plant populations during their regular field work. So include your other specialists. It just makes life much simpler and gets a much broader net out there than you can ever achieve by yourself. We also collect vouchers, and we share the specimens with the Smithsonian Institute and the regional herbarium and keep a sample for ourselves as well. And all of our local herbarium samples are now included online at the Pacific Northwest Herbaria Project, which is a side benefit of doing the seed collection that we've done. So you also collect field site information and photos to adequately document the local source. Although this came from participation in the Seeds of Success program, as part of the protocol, it's an invaluable habit to maintain for even small-scale seed collections. Quality preparation and field time yields quality collections, and also this information is necessary for growers to certified seed as locally sourced. So over the years, we've collected seed with a variety of groups. By relying on existing programs and other resources in BLM, with Idaho Fish and Game, Chicago Botanic Garden, and any volunteer groups that are looking to get some time out at the time that we need some seed collected, we can aid and abet our seed collection, and we've been able to expand the quality and the quantity of our collections by this method. However, at least one person, and preferably more, who's involved in the collection process should have completed the Seed Collection for Conservation and Restoration course, which is offered by BLM. By focusing on a narrow range of species before the field season begins, you can create a really defined focus for which species that you're going to target and the areas that you're looking to collect from, and you can get an actually achievable collection goal by doing that. So you should have a list of target species that you want to go out and do collections for increase on. And the main reason for this is that it allows for flexibility to account for species that might not produce in that year or have bug infestation issues or fires or grazing from livestock or jackrabbits or voles or whatever it is, and other unforeseen instances that always happen. And another thing that's helped is participating in the Seeds of Success program, and this is just worthwhile based on the quality of the product that we get returned. The protocol is more stringent, but it's a worthwhile cause. You get 10,000 seeds kept back as part of the program, and it's minimal pay for the quality product that's returned, along with all the information that's needed by us or by a grower. So funding and contracting, Ben touched on this a lot more than what I'm going to, but basically funding is necessary to actually get a seed collection program started. which seems pretty obvious. Whether it's for supplies to collect herbarium voucher specimens, or shipping collections, or for cameras, gloves, fuel, etc., you need to have some sort of dollar figure to make a project happen, and a vision for the direction that you want your program to go in helps quite a bit too. And funding sources vary within BLM. Of course, healthy lands, putting in a BPS project submission and putting it under the various themes that are changing every year in there, and resilient landscapes. Whatever the latest catchphrase is, there's always something that can be crafted to request funding. It's just starting small and building up from there. Small successes help build bigger successes. And contracting options. IDIQ, we have a tool in place now regionally to contract for seed increase and grow out needs. And this is nice because the heavy lifting is already done and the request for the work is made through task orders. And the benefit is also that it creates a standard set of deliverables and expectations from and for the growers and the agency using the IDIQ. And then regular sole source contracts, and that's what we've been doing over the past. I think we'll start using the IDIQ this year. The sole source contracts have worked out really well in the past to provide the goods and services that we require, but like I said previously, having that nice, clearly defined standard set of deliverables, not just from us, but from anyone else who's using that IDIQ would be beneficial. And then agreements. So I have a theory that you could use agreements to partner with interest groups for collection and or grow outs and plantings. Idaho Fish and Game would be an example of a partner that would probably be one to utilize agreements with. Schools with or without greenhouses and grow out operations currently in place, or conservation groups to collect and increase seed, or to do grow outs for seedlings and get them back in the ground. Currently, we're working in the early stages of 2 agreements in Twin Falls District for shrub plantings with 2 different conservation groups. And I think you could work with youth conservation corps for seed collection and plantings as well. So in Shoshone, as an example of one of our seeds that we've had success with, in 2010, we received funding to collect and increase native seed as part of the BLM Native Plant Materials Development and Seeds of Success programs. Field crews spent a few days harvesting seed from Crater's bluegrass, which is what we call it. It's actually just Posicunda plants. It just grows a little bit differently than what your typical bluegrass does. The seed was cleaned by the Bend Seed Extractory, and we received just under 10 pounds of clean seed back from them, and we placed it into an increase program through contract. At the end of that contract in 2013, we received back 113 pounds of seed, and the grower actually produced nearly a ton total, and we were able to purchase that through the BLM seed buy. And in 2014, we had a 35,000 acre fire out in Timmerman Hills area, which is pretty critical sage grouse habitat. And it's the first burned area where we've used that Crater's bluegrass seed as part of our ESR work. So last year it was starting to take off, and this year we'll see for sure how successful it's doing. So we're going to target this species again in 2016 to continue to increase it. In 2014, we collected some forb species throughout the Shoshone Field Office, and they included Hooker's balsam root, shaggy fleabane, Oregon sunshine, fernleaf biscuit root, and false dandelion. And all of those are preferred forbs for greater sage grouse, and all of them have been contracted for grow and increase, similar to what's in place with the bluegrass. The forb seeds were collected from an area that burned in 2011, and it was actually one of the pictures at the beginning of the slide that is an area that is lower elevation for our district and is some pretty harsh growing conditions, lots of Medusa head wild rye and cheatgrass. So those plants are exhibiting a lot of vigor and resiliency following a moderate to high severity fire, and those seem like the types of specimens that you'd want to target for putting back into restoration and rehabilitation projects. And that list is combining, I guess you'd say, low-hanging fruit with not so low-hanging fruit. And this helps to ensure that you're not targeting species that are impossible to grow or incredibly difficult to grow, but you're going to get some guaranteed return back and have a pretty good idea on what you're going to get, but it's also important to collect stuff and grow that's important for the landscape, but it also may need a little bit more information on the techniques utilized to actually successfully grow those plants. So in 2015, we collected Thurber's needlegrass, low elevation big squirreltail, and mat buckwheat, and we ended up contracting the big squirreltail and the Indian ricegrass that we had collected a couple years previously for increase, as well as holding over those 3 forb species that we collected in 14 to contract in 15. And then in the fall of 2015, we collected sagebrush seed for an agreement with the Institute for Applied Ecology to grow 50,000 seedlings for fall of 2016 planting, and that collection was done in-house. Most everything that you've seen so far has been seed that was collected with Chicago Botanic Garden interns or in-house or a combination of both. So right now we have multiple contracts in place to increase native plant materials. I'm pretty pleased with the pictures that we've seen from our grower that we're contracted with on the production and the establishment of plants. Just keeping tabs on that stuff is all part of contracting. And some of these collections that we've made in the past are also being grown in small quantities by different partners, including Fish and Game and local high schools. So, and also Duck Valley. So these are containerized stock that we'll get back and put out in small locations across the landscape, pretty select areas. So this is an example of a project that we have that isn't part of the Seeds of Success program, but it's reaped some pretty good benefits. It started small and it's growing into a larger project every year. So we collected birch seed in 2010 for a riparian restoration project along the Littlewood River, and this is a project that gets completed by volunteers and Fish and Game every year, and BLM, to do some restoration work with willows, dogwoods, cottonwoods, that kind of stuff. So we thought that putting in some of the river birch that's taken from another place along that stretch would be a good addition to this restoration project. So we made a test run with 100 seedlings. We planted 50 of them in 2011, which is what the picture is that you're looking at, as 10 cubic inch containerized stock, and the rest of them were planted in 2012. And that's a picture from 2014 of the plants that were planted in 2011. So in 2014, a stretch of that river burned up, which fortunately was in between where we'd been doing the willow plantings for the last few years. So we decided to collect some more seed and grow some more containerized stock. So the seed was shipped to a grower and returned after a year as 10 cubic inch seedlings, similar to what's pictured in the previous slide, and 150 more birch seedlings are planted this fall by volunteers as part of the National Public Lands Day event that we have in Shoshone, and we plan to do more in out years as well. And that particular seed is similar to what Ben was saying about sagebrush, where you just kind of collect what you need and then use it on an as-needed basis for the seedlings that you want to get out there. So the next steps would be to increase our program to align with seed zones and predicting seed needs. In 2016, we're going to utilize the Chicago Botanic Garden interns to do some research and field verify a bunch of locations for seed collection of needed species. That way we can have those as areas to target for seed collection, not just this year, but into the future. And for instance, the Fields program for Twin Falls planted 1 million sagebrush and bitterbrush seedlings in 2015, and we intend to identify local seed sources for collecting and growing future seedlings. The goal is to have all of our seedlings planted in the district come from seed that was collected in district by our own crews or volunteers, or to follow the contracting means, but to know exactly where that seed was collected from and have a pretty big hand in selecting which populations to target for collection. And we also want to develop and expand our partnerships for growing and planting shrubs, possibly for grasses and forbs too. So the next steps that we've identified are in line with the recently released National Seed Strategy as well. And this is just an example of one of the fire rehabs that we have. It's in a 8 to 10 inch precip zone. Certainly has some issues with cheatgrass and medusa head. It successfully established all the weird moisture that we've been getting in the form of fall precipitation. Probably had a pretty good hand in that, but we'll take it. And that's a close-up of some of the sagebrush seed that was aerially applied. That is 1 year post-application for that sagebrush seed. And this is taken in March of 2015. And this is in the same location. Some of the sagebrush seedlings that continued to persist, and that was taken in October of 2015. And that was one of the ones that was doing really, really well. That was actually producing some seed the following year. And that's the goal. So that is all that we have if you have any questions.
Great, thank you so much. All right, if you have questions, please type them into the questions pane of your control panel. There were a couple questions about what is BPS and IDIQ.
Oh, IDIQ is indefinite delivery, indeterminate quantity, and BPS is budget procurement system. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And you had mentioned that the BLM offers seed collection courses. Are there any that will be offered this year?
So the one that I mentioned, that seed collection for conservation and restoration, I think is what it's called, is offered by BLM, and there is one offered this year.
How would one find out about it?
Well, if you're a BLM employee, then you can go on to DOI Learn, and it'll be listed in there. And I'm not 100% sure the availability of it outside of there, but you could probably, for informal discussions and opportunities, contacting your ARS office, like what's over in, is it NISA, is where, there's one over there. Anyways, or your Native Plant Society would probably be another good contact for other informal trainings or opportunities.
Great, thanks. I'll ask a question in case there are some more that are coming in. I'll ask one question. So Ben, well, both of you were talking about hiring seed contractors to collect seed, and what is the general background of your contractors?
Well, since this was just the first year we tried to initiate the seed collection contract, can't really speak to a lot of the contractors that could be applying, but the 3 that we did receive bids from were actual seed vendors from the Southwest or the Pacific Northwest, so they have experience collecting various types of species of seed. But there's always that potential that you may get a startup company that doesn't have a lot, that you don't know a lot about, doesn't have a reputation, and I think going back to the presentation where you want to do a post-award site tour just to try to get a feeling for what the knowledge base of that contractor and foreman is going to save you a lot of heartache in the long run, especially if there's no background knowledge of that contractor.
Great, thanks. All right, next question. When you're collecting grass seed and Poa secunda in particular, are you stripping seeds by hand, or is it easier to clip and collect the entire inflorescence of the plant?
We were getting pretty good luck by hand stripping, but if you're going for speed and not bulk, then clipping those inflorescences works really, really well. You just have to have the technique of grabbing the whole inflorescence and then just clipping it and putting it into buckets is how we were doing it. 5-gallon plastic buckets, and then taking it back to a larger, those plastic seed bags and bundling it all together that way.
Great, thank you. The next question, are the newly planted areas protected from disturbance? If so, for how long?
So with our projects that we do, our restoration and rehabilitation work, temporary closures and protections are typically included in the plan for those projects, so yes.
Great, thanks. And Anna Halford wants to mention that information on the Seeds of Success training can be obtained by contacting BLM State Botany leads. Okay, well those are all of the questions for the moment. If you still have some, keep typing. I just want to let you all know that when the webinar closes, there will be a 3-question survey that will appear, and if you would answer those 3 questions, that would be great. I will post a recording of this webinar on our Great Basin Fire Science YouTube channel this afternoon, and the link will be automatically sent to you through the GoToWebinar system tomorrow. Another question just came in. How do you store your raw seed before sending it to the Bend extractory?
Well, we have the good fortune of having an old warehouse that is nice and cool in the summer and also has enough area to spread out the seed so that it can so we can make sure that it's dry. But we usually send it pretty quickly after we collect it, and it's usually pretty dry. So we might only house it here for a week before we ship it to them. And there's a whole bunch of protocols involved with how to properly ship that and get it to them in a timely fashion.
Great, thank you. All right, so that looks like the last question. Our next webinar, Restoring Shrub Step After Wildfire, Shrub Planting as a Viable Tool in Rehabilitation, will take place this Thursday, the 28th. If you have further questions regarding this webinar or have requests for future webinars, please email or call me at any time. Again, thank you so much for your participation today, everybody, and thank you, Ben and Danelle, for your presentations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, have a great day.